Good afternoon, and for those who's going to be watching us later on, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here with you again in this amazing Saturday, sunny Saturday of a beautiful spring of 2021. And today, really, another amazing presentation that we will be bringing to one another and discussing a very important topic in our lives. But before we go on, as usual, as we would like to do here at the SSB with you, is to acclimate ourselves and get ourselves together, minds and hearts, so then we can pass the word to our dear friend Kirsten, who's going to conduct this amazing Saturday afternoon into our evening. Before we do anything else, let us open a page of the book Happy Life. I have still the old version here with me, which still works. It's the same message, it's the same information as the new one, and it's always blessing, right? It's always a blessing for all of us. And I think that, well, I am quite sure it has everything to do with the topic that we will talk about today. And it will all make sense once we finalize, but I'm not going to spoil what we have to talk about it today. Joanna de Angelis in this chapter says the following: blessed with joy every opportunity to evolve. Pain faced with resignation loses its intensity. When suffered silently, it passes more quickly. Suffering that you do not deserve will never reach you, but you will not be an exception to the rule and pass through earth without confronting it. God's law are the same for everyone, replacing love, which is scarce. Pain is the master that enforces advancement. The topic today, guess what, is about freedom of choice. Kirsten will be talking about another chapter of the amazing book, Time of Health and Consciousness, by the same author, Joanna de Angelis, through the medium Divaldo Franco. So we have a choice, right, to change, bring love into our lives throughout the moments of despair or difficulties. So on that note, I know that I'm doing a little bit different here, going through the topic that we'll talk about it before we even pray. But it has a reason. The reason is so that we can really think about the idea of freedom of choice. One, the choice that Joanna de Angelis brings to us here. So as we are praying, let us connect with the topic. Let us connect with what freedom of choice could be, what it is for us, and perhaps what Joanna de Angelis will bring to us through the explanations also that Kirsten will bring to us in the examples as well. So on that note, we would like to invite everyone. You may close your eyes, find a comfortable position, yet attentive. Let us put aside any distraction that we may have in our homes, wherever we may be. Whatever environment we are right now, it's important that we really connect with the message, asking our dear Father, Mother, God to guide us all throughout this moment that we have come thus far, preparing ourselves to receive a good message, to change our inner environment as well as everything that is around us. As we produce new thoughts, new feelings with the explanations, the teachings, and in some cases as well, reminders that we are about to receive. We acknowledge the presence of our mentors here with us, guiding us and allowing us to really connect with every word, every phrase, the message in general. But most importantly, it's up to us to make our choices, to change what we have received for the best of us, now and in the future. And why not ask our dear Creator, our mentors, and the mentor of our dear friend Kirsten to guide her, to be a good vessel who will be bringing this amazing topic, teachings of Joanna de Angelis for us. All the work that has been prepared, put forth for us to be here today. We show our gratitude by connecting fully with one another, wherever we may be, and with the speaker. May you, dear Lord, bless us all now and ever, and so be it. And Kirsten, as usual, this topic, freedom of choice, right, or free will, is such an amazing topic for all of us because sometimes we feel despaired, we feel that we don't have a choice, but we do. Obviously, any place that we are, especially in the physical body, there are limitations. But I'll pass the word to you to please conduct us and guide us in this amazing message. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leo. Thanks for that opening prayer. Quite beautiful. And the message that Joanna brought was also equally just as beautiful and inspiring. And it just really brought us to some ideas that do touch on today's topic. You know, this idea of choice often seems more something that's, you know, outside of ourselves, or it seems like a theoretical or religious or a debatable topic for sure. And people on the right side or the left side have great amounts of facts or ideas to back it up. But the interesting thing that we love the most is this phrase from Joanna, you know, regardless of what you believe, and we're going to dive into that today, is this beautiful reminder. And oftentimes, when we're in the midst of experiencing extreme pain, whether it's physical or otherwise, or emotional or mental or what have you, it's all connected anyway. But when we're in the midst of it, when we're at its apex, at the height of it, it's very hard to conceptualize in that moment that, well, I made choices that have led me here. But because that often is, we're so enraptured with the pain and the struggles that we're going through, that's even hard to think. And if you are trying to console someone, it's not the most consoling thing to tell them, well, there are things that you did that brought you here. Of course, no, we would talk about it in a different context. Instead of, you know, why we've reached this point, but how can we manage the point that we've reached? Because fact is fact. Indeed, our choices lead us to consequences. We are absolutely free to choose whatever we want. We can think whatever we want to think. But that does not absolve us from the consequences. That is the often part of the equation people forget. But if we can, when we're in the midst of suffering and we're going through that pain and we're, you know, in despair, this amazing thing that Joanna brings to us, and we love that we were just reminded of this, that it's not that through resignation we are giving up, but it's through that resignation that lessens that intensity of the pain that we feel. And that's something pretty phenomenal for anyone who has ever felt despair or anyone who's ever suffered. If you can go back and remember those moments, which I know none of us want to really, but to have anything that lessens your pain, that is really what we seek. That's really what everyone seeks, is to lessen their pain. You know, people that have committed suicide or have thoughts of suicide don't do so or don't engage in such thoughts or acts because they just, you know, want to leave everything behind, but it's that they want to get away from the pain. So anything that we can help ourselves or others to minimize that, let's make use of it. Like, it's free. You don't have to go to a physician for a prescription for it. If I can find ways, if I can journey inside myself and find resignation, I can lessen that pain that I'm feeling. And that is a lot, because oftentimes someone will go through something difficult and a friend will call them and console them, or a friend will come by and they'll visit. have a cup of tea or coffee with you, and your friend will say, "I wish I could do more," and you'll say to them, "You've done more than you even know," because just that little bit of kindness alleviates some of that pain for us and for those that are suffering. So you might think, "Oh, it's so minuscule, it's so minor." Not when you're someone who's going through a really rough time. Every little bit helps, as they say. But freedom of choice. Choice. We all have them, right? We all have choices in our lives. And before we begin this chapter, for the first 20 chapters of this book, there's 40. Don't be that scared. They're actually small chapters. Joanna has an affirmation before every chapter. We believe that she has it there for a purpose, for a reason, for us to take a moment and to really say these affirmations out loud, wherever you are, and really mean it, and really try to allow those words to go into every cell of your being. And if you want to imagine that, that's good too. In the book Evolution Two Worlds, Angela Louise tells us that we should talk to ourselves. So talk to yourselves. Speak love into them. Speak healing into them. Speak goodness into them. So let's get started. Say this with me. The divine thought has given me the freedom to accomplish all the good that I desire. Being happy or unhappy is my free choice. I'm a slave to the law, which enables me to progress without stopping. What I am or what I will be depends on me. Inspiration from above is never lacking. However, attuning myself to it shall be my personal aspiration. Erecting existential structures in my mind, I shall make them a reality over the course of my life. I'm going to leave this screen on just for a second, because if you're not viewing us through your smartphone, if you're viewing us with the TV or whatnot, I'd say, pull out your smartphone, or even if you're watching through your smartphone, you could do a screenshot of it. And I want you to just take a picture of this and keep this with you and read it on a daily basis or whenever you feel like it. Sometimes the beginning of every day to say affirmations just to set the tone of the day is one of the best things you can do for yourself. It's not saying that your day is going to be perfect. It's not saying that your day is not going to be difficult. It's not saying that your day is not going to be full of trials. But you are setting the tone and you are making the choice that you are wanting to choose happiness. And yes, it is a choice. And yes, we are aware that there are those that suffer from chronic illnesses, chronic pain, and a lot of pain itself is not always physical. Some of the deeper pain that each one of us can possibly carry from one life to another is that pain in our heart, that emotional memory that Joanna says we carry. Although God blesses us and allows us to forget the details of what we've done in a previous life, but the emotional memory, it stays with us. That's why people sometimes have the unexplained feelings inside of them of either sadness or joy for this thing or another thing, the things that we cannot explain in life. A soul looked at life from one lifetime, if you will. It's because we carry that, Joanna says. And we've been reverberating that sadness or that negativity or what have you for however long we have. Maybe it's been many lifetimes. Maybe it's just been 1 or 2. Maybe it's been 10 or 20. So it takes us needing to live on purpose and consciously. That's why part of the reason this book is called Times of Conscientiousness, is to be conscious, to live on purpose. And that is our choice. That is the beauty that God gives us, is that freedom to choose. But also the consequences. Let's talk about that. So Joanna says in the beginning of this chapter, she says, you are free to mark your life with the standard of happiness or affliction with which you want to live. Freedom is a law of life and is part of the concert of universal harmony. We love that. It is part of the concert of universal harmony. So freedom is in the notes of life. It's in the composition. It's in the reverberation. It's in everything that we hear. You know, when you think of a concert, you think of the string section and I don't know the other sections because I only played strings. The different parts of an orchestra, right? So there's many different aspects of it. So freedom is part of this divine concert, and it's a perfect harmony. This is just part of the many laws of God, and you can find them in part 3 of the Spirit's book. And we'll talk a little bit about that. In part 3 of the Spirit's book, Free Will, Kardec asks the spirits, do humans act with free will? Now, I know a lot of you are either on Facebook and watching this, or you are on YouTube. So I want you to feel free to go ahead, drop your comments and what you think. Do we have free will? Do humans act with free will? You could say yes. You could say no. You could say you're crazy. That's not nice. Don't say that. You can drop one of those emojis like, I don't really know, I'm unsure, or that, that emoji with the little, thing on their face, or like, I'm not really sure. Or just say yes or no. What do you think? Do humans act with free will? Do we have free will? I'll give you a second for you to drop your emoji if and when you want to. If not, that's fine too. But let's go ahead to the answer. Do humans act with free will? Since they have freedom of thought, they have freedom of action. Without free will, human beings would be machines. So yeah, we do. We have free will. Absolutely. We have freedom of thought, freedom of action. And this is all in part 3 of the Spirit's book. This is one of the laws, the law of freedom. Question 825, Kardec asks, are there positions in the world in which persons can flatter themselves that they enjoy absolute freedom? Absolute freedom. No, because all of you, the least as well as the greatest, need one another. So yes, we have free will, but we do not have absolute freedom. So we have the freedom to choose, but it is not absolute, which means there are consequences to it. What would be a good what would be a condition in which humans could enjoy absolute freedom? That of a hermit in the desert. As soon as they are 2 individuals together, there are rights to respect, and they therefore no longer have absolute freedom. So if you're alone completely,
You're okay, Kirsten. I just want to make sure that you were on the right network there, because we were feeling a little bit of your audio just going out and back in.
Oh, okay.
Just make sure that
Um,
you're on your right network.
I am. Should I can switch to another one just to
Yeah,
see.
yeah, we can. Yeah, let's try to do that. Just make sure you're on the right one.
Okay. If it knocks me off, I'll just come back and join again.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Sorry to
Okay.
interrupt.
Hopefully. Nope. No problem. Hey, we always want to get this right. Technology is what it is. Okay. Let me switch back out into this mode. Give me a second here. Okay. And are we good? Can you see my screen?
Perfect. Yes, everything is
Awesome. Good. Okay. So moving on to question 826. What would be a condition in which humans can enjoy absolute freedom, that of a hermit in a desert? As soon as there are two individuals together, there are rights to respect, and they therefore no longer have absolute freedom. Ergo, we live in a society, and unless you live completely alone in a cave, nobody has absolute freedom. You can't just do what you want. We have to respect other people and respect their rights as well. These are interesting points to think about, because when we think about free will, like, well, I get to choose, or people choose what they want to choose. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, but also remember there are consequences for everything that we do. We want to talk a little bit more what's in the Spirit's book, just a teeny tiny bit, just to kind of emphasize what Joanna's talking about in this chapter when we're talking about the law of freedom, freedom of choice, just so we can drive it home a little bit more. In the Spirit's book, question 833, they say, is there something in human beings which escapes all constraint and through which they enjoy absolute freedom? The Spirit's answer, it is through thought that they enjoy unlimited freedom. For thought knows no obstacles. Its manifestations may be hindered, but not erased. So in our thoughts, we have this unlimited freedom. We can think about whatever we want to think about. There are no obstacles to it. But don't forget the little tidbit there. The manifestations of those thoughts can be hindered, but not erased, which means there still are effects of how we think, what we think about. We know in terms of those thoughts being imprinted in our aura, and that negative energy we could potentially be sending out and putting ourselves in some sort of wavelength. We're also leaving ourselves open to not great stuff happening back to us, because we're putting ourselves, everything is vibration and energy, and if I attune myself to a certain channel that's not really a good channel, I'm going to feel that. It's going to reverberate back. Are humans responsible for their thoughts or their thought? They are responsible before God. God alone can know it and condemn it or absolve it according to the divine justice. So yes, we have unlimited freedom in the thoughts, but again, it's not without its consequences. And we put up here, this is our own phrase we put up here after doing this study. It was just a phrase that kept reverberating in our mind, that we have free will, but we are never free from consequences. We have free will, but we are never free from their consequences. So freedom of conscience. Is freedom of conscience a consequence of freedom or thought? Is freedom of conscience a consequence of freedom of thought? Excuse me. What do you guys think about that? Conscience is an inner thought that belongs to persons, like all other thoughts. So my conscience is what leads me, what is like my compass. I can have thoughts of, I should do this, this is the right way, or thoughts of, well, no, this is the wrong way to go about it. Do humans have the right to set up barriers to freedom of conscience? This is interesting. Do humans have the right to set up barriers to freedom of conscience? So if conscience is our internal compass, letting us know if I should go this way or that way, it's kind of like the little angel, little devil on my shoulder, if you will. So do other people have the right to infringe upon my conscience? That's what this question is asking. To set up barriers, to say no. The Spirit's answer, no more so than the freedom of thought, because God alone has the right to judge the conscience. If by their laws humans regulate relations between individuals, God, through natural law, regulates the relations between individuals and God. So this is interesting because I believe it was Bezalel Jimenez's, in one of his many hundreds of communications that he had given to console us. And if anyone's interested to knowing the exact message, I can pull it up, send it to you via email later. But in one message that he gave in consolation to us when the world in which we live in, which is one of trials and tribulations, he said that we do not have the right to violate another person's conscience. And we could say it's like the Spirit's book was just written in his heart, because we don't. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And hopefully we'll get that idea as we're kind of going through these slides today, that yes, I have free will, but I don't have the right to impose what I feel is the right way to someone else, unless someone's in danger, something like that. And we're going to talk about that here in a second, or it's harmful. But if I think a certain way and I think that that's the right way, that's my right, but we don't have that right to impose that on somebody else. Let's dig a little deeper here. In the Spirit's book, 837, what is the result of barriers to freedom of conscience? What is the result of putting up these barriers to freedom of conscience? What happens when we put barriers up? The Spirit's answer, it constrains individuals to act against their own way of thinking, turning them into hypocrites. Freedom of conscience is one of the characteristics of true civilization and progress. Wow. That's pretty monumental, whether we're thinking about it on a small scale in our family setting, or we're thinking about it on a international or national world scale. We see this happen. Let's be real. We've seen certain cultures and belief systems silence or put barriers to people's freedom of conscience and of choice. And really what the spirits tell us is that, and as we're going to read on here in a minute here, that they can do that, but honestly, it just makes hypocrites out of people, because internally they feel one way, but on the outside they're expressing something different. Let's go deeper. Are we reprehensible when we use our own belief to scandalize someone who does not think like us? Let's stop there. Let's stop right there. And for those of you who are listening, whether on Facebook or YouTube or the recorded version of this, when you read this question, don't think about somebody else. Think about how in your life there's been a time that you may have done this, where we've used our own belief to cause a scandal when someone doesn't think like us, and they don't specify in any particular respect. Can you think of a time where you encountered someone? We are sure that you have, unless you've been living in a cave for a million years, it's highly likely you've encountered someone who does not think like you. It highly likely is a family member, a relative, spouse, a partner, a child. And how have we reacted? What have we done? Think about that for a second. Can you recall a time? Because Kardec is asking the spirits, are we reprehensible? When we use our belief to scandalize someone who does not think like us, are we in the wrong? Is what he's asking. What do you guys think? Say it out loud. I can hear you. No, I really can't. I'm just kidding. Let's see what the spirits say. It shows a lack of charity and goes against freedom of thought. It's a lack of charity. It's harsh. It's harsh, but it's quite common. We are humans and we are fallible, and we will go head to head or we'll argue, even unknowingly, because we live our lives a certain way and we have this expectation that others around us, either who live with us or who work with us, that they should be thinking as I think, because my way is the right way to think. And it's so much ingrained in us that we might not even be that aware that that is our own personal reality. So it is a lack of charity, and it goes against freedom of thought. It's not right. And yes, it is reprehensible. Let's stop doing that. In the Spirit's Book, question 840, Kardec says, does it go against freedom of conscience to obstruct beliefs that might disturb society? This is interesting. Does it go against freedom of conscience to obstruct beliefs that might disturb society? Acts may be restrained, but inner belief is inaccessible. So yes, we can restrain people, but it won't change them. And then there's a footnote there, or a little explanation from Kardec, and he says, restraining the external acts of a belief when such acts cause harm to others does not go against freedom of conscience, for such repression leaves to the belief its entire freedom. I'm going to read that again. Restraining the external acts of a belief when such acts cause harm to others does not go against freedom of conscience, for such repression leaves to the belief its entire freedom. So stopping someone from harming another person, because based on their beliefs, that's what they believe that should be done, that is one of the exceptions to freedom of conscience. That's where we can step in and say no. Because we don't have the right to harm others. It's an exception that if we even can call it an exception. And the Spirit explained to us, because by doing so, we're not actually even infringing on their belief system. We're just saying, no, you can't do that. The buck stops here. So we can't impose our beliefs on someone else. And we for sure, do not have the right to harm another person based on our beliefs. Yes, we have freedom of thought. Yes, we have freedom of conscience. We can believe what we want to believe. We can feel how we want to feel. Just know that all those things have repercussions. But there's a line that's drawn in the sand. It says, okay, you have your freedoms, but your freedom ends when mine begins. So there's a balance there. Joanna goes on to say in the chapter, the immovable, deterministic imperatives concerning the physical body are life and death, although even these two aspects are subject to the fatalism of incessant change. Subject to actions which in turn trigger corresponding reactions, you are what you make of yourself on your chosen pathway. So life and death are fatalistic. So we know that we're going to die. And truly, the only thing, and they talk about this in the Spirit's book, that's really fatalistic is that, right before death. But in between, there are things that we can modify and change, whether it's, when a person is born into this life. So I'll give you an example. Like if you're thinking, Kirsten, what are you talking about? Okay, let's talk about a pregnant woman. Okay, so over the last 13, 14 years, over the last 10 years, I've taken care of a great deal of pregnant women in my profession. So, and I've seen a vast array of different cases, hundreds of thousands. So there are some cases where we see women who, for one reason or another, no judgment, that find themselves in an addiction during their pregnancy. So sometimes that addiction will actually lead to the birth of their child much earlier than what was supposed to happen. They, by their choice, cause that to happen. Or because of their choices that they made, the child is born with a lot of issues. Now, the opposite can happen too. We might make choices and medical science comes in and is able to alleviate, thank God, some of it. And some of these things are out of our hands. Some of these things are just, the female body, the way things happen. Even though you do everything right, sometimes the body still does things that we don't yet fully grasp or understand, or just written in our reincarnatory plan as a means for us to grow and to learn. And so we never know. Things can always slightly change. And we love this fatalism of incessant change. That there's always changes going on. There's always things that can modify. It's not like you steal an apple and that no matter what you do, you're going to get your hand chopped off. Sorry to be graphic. No, in life, it's not one thing for the other. Thank God Spiritism teaches us there's that attenuation. And with death is similar. We just read a case about that in the book Heaven and Hell. And in the chapter under Average Spirits, there's a spirit by the name of Miss Anna. I forget her last name. You can look it up. It's in there. And at the time that was designated for her death, she was supposed to die, but the spirits explained that through her great force of willpower, she was able to prolong her life 3 more months. But the spirits explain it's not so magical, mystical as you would think, like, boom, 1 second, she just said, I want to live 3 more months, and I did. No, the high spirit said, the messenger, I believe it was St. Louis in that particular chapter, he said, it's, God, higher spirituality, we allow those kinds of things to happen if it's for the greater purpose. And for that particular case, that woman, Miss Anna, is for the purpose of her own growth, and most likely the growth of her family and her children as well. Everything is subject to change. It's all on us. I mean, it should be an aspect of hope for us because we know that things are not forever. Pain is not forever. It's one of the weird oddities of pain is that it makes us feel like it's going to be going on forever and ever and ever and ever. And it's not. It's an illusion. It's almost like a trick that our brain plays on us. But it's not. And we love this quote that we found from the book Inspiration for a Woman's Soul, Choosing Happiness. And the quote is, sometimes moving forward requires us to leave behind everything we know, even the person we thought we were. And I believe it was Leo who many years ago gave this talk or something like that. I remember he used to say this phrase, letting go of that old man inside of you, or letting go of that idea of that old person, not old in the sense of age, but old in the sense of like the old you. Sometimes we got to let go of that image we have of ourselves, of what we're supposed to be, and embrace a bigger picture of who we can be. Joanna goes on to say that there are people who prefer to gripe and complain, storing up self-serving pessimism. They use their large number of mentally created ailments to barter for love. And this is really like this dangerous behavior personality types where they get stuck in this loop of where they constantly complain and then use that and try to gain empathy, love from others. Oh, poor me, pity me. And it's not good. Others adopt imagined suffering to blackmail their loved ones for attention and physical affection. However, such attention is never enough for them. They do not realize that what they are doing will only dry up the generous supply offered to them. Now, let's just take a little break here, real quick, and just say there's nothing wrong with talking about your feelings, with expressing how you feel. There seems to be this paradox, and people don't quite understand the difference between griping and complaining and storing up self-serving pessimism and just talking openly about your truths, about your emotions and your feelings. Now, sometimes that requires us to see a professional, and that's okay. Sometimes we need someone that is a professional to lead us through our own thoughts and understand ourselves. But those people are people who want to get better. They want some semblance of normalcy or happiness. What Joanna is talking about are people like that dog that sits on a nail and that's moaning and making noises. And you walk by and you're like, why is your dog moaning? And the owner goes, well, because he's sitting on a nail. And then you go, well, why doesn't he just get up? And the owner goes, well, because I guess he's not in enough pain. He's in some pain, but he'll complain. Not enough to actually get up and do something about it. That's kind of like these people. Without wanting to judge, we're just wanting to understand. And that there are people that blackmail their loved ones for attention and physical affection. But what they don't realize is this manipulative behavior is going to end up draining those that are trying to help them. And remember, for those of you that are watching or listening to this is not you. If you are a person that likes to go to your friend to vent, to talk about your life, and your friend in turn gives you advice, and then that advice helps you and it helps you to make better choices and you have insights, that's different. This is something else, what we're talking about here. We don't want anyone to take away from this that, oh my gosh, I talked to someone at the Spirit Center and I told them about my problem. So, oh my gosh, I'm this person. I'm blackmailing them. No, you're not. We know in the depths of our soul who we are and what we're doing if we truly examine ourselves. Now, if you identify with this, what Joanna's talking about, it's okay. Listen, forgive yourself. Acknowledge that you've done this, and also acknowledge that you want to do better, that you don't want to live like that anymore, that you want to experience real love, real self-love, real happiness. I took care of a patient over a decade ago, and she was a long-term patient I had for years, for a few years actually. And I got to know her and her family pretty well, and she was much older than I was. And one of the things that I came to know about her was that her whole life, this is per her family, so let's take it with a grain of salt, but her whole life consisted of her complaining about everything. And then until the very day she died, she was complaining about how much her life was terrible. And she literally, and I mean this literally, died with her last breaths complaining about life. And I didn't understand it at the time. I didn't judge her. I always was curious about the human psyche, but didn't understand at that time why we would choose such a thing. Because oftentimes these people aren't living consciously. We're just flowing the wave of whatever emotion we feel. And sometimes we go undiagnosed with depression or anxiety or other type of abnormal thought disorders. And when we say that, there's such a stigma to that. And there really shouldn't be. It should be like anything else, any other ailments out there in the world, like diabetes or Crohn's disease or any other kind of chronic illness you can think of. There are treatments. There are medical treatments that need interventions that can help us to manage the physical so that we can find some semblance of normalcy and some calm in our lives so we can get to the inner parts of ourselves that need that healing, the parts of our soul that need that healing. Okay, I digress. Let's go back a little bit to the Spirits Wheel real quick to help us further drive home some of this information. In question 862, the spirits, Kardec asked the spirits, there are those who never manage to succeed, who seem to be pursued by a bad influence in all their undertakings. Isn't this what we could call fatalism? The spirits answer, it could be fatalism, if you would like to call it that. But it results from the choice of the kind of existence. Such individuals wanted to experience a life full of disappointment in order to exercise their patience and resignation. However, you must not believe that this fatalism is always unavoidable. It is often only the result of their having taken a wrong path that is not in keeping with their intelligence and aptitudes. Someone who tries to swim across a river without knowing how to swim stands a very good chance of drowning. And this is just an excerpt. There's some other parts to it, but it's really long. The spirits go on to say, what causes their failure are their conceit and ambition, which divert them from their proper path and make them consider a vocation that entails nothing but the desire to satisfy certain passions. Then fail, and it's their own fault. But instead of recognizing their error, they prefer to blame their horoscope. And if anyone is ever on social media, we see this, that someone's blaming the phase of the moon for why, I just screamed at my brother over the phone or what have you. Yes, all those things I'm sure have an effect to some degree, but ultimately it is our choice, the choice that we make, that oftentimes we are not even that conscious of. It's kind of like eating. Sometimes we're just eating whatever, not really thinking about what's going into our mouths or where those things have come from. Sometimes you're just hungry, you just want to eat, you just grab something really quick, but it's about living a life more on purpose, more intention, as some people would say. Joanna goes on to say that nobody feels good among people who use misfortune as a false solution to their existential conflicts. Nobody feels good among people who use misfortune as a false solution to their existential conflicts. So those who just blame misfortune, that's the issue, that's their problem. This emotional duress ends up producing false friendships, embarrassing situations, and more insecurity. You can and should be happy. It is your free choice. We might be able to garner friendships and relationships by presenting our life as this sad, sad situation, and that these are our major issues. But it's an eye-opening, awakening moment when Joanna says, she prophesizes, if you will, because I'm sure either you've had personal experience or you know people like this, that those types of relationships that we build from misfortune as a false solution to their existential conflicts, as Joanna says, they end up producing false friendships or embarrassing situations and even more insecurity. Sort of, you know, not being genuine or authentic or not being connected to self just also puts me on that wavelength to connect to others that are the same way. So on one hand, perhaps yes, this person, we want that, we want peace of mind, but we are getting it through utilizing all this negativity in our lives, and we end up getting friendships, or developing friendships rather, and it never works out. But she does remind us that we can be happy. You can and should be happy. It is a free choice. It is our choice. Now, hold on a second. We're not saying that all of a sudden you when you say I want to be happy, that boom, a light switch goes off. You know, the Hollywood scenery of, you know, the scenic nature, and like Cinderella, the birds are going to be singing at your window. Actually, not really. No. Making the choice to be happy, if that's one of the choices that you're making, is just like a key opening a door. That's all that it is. You're opening up a door. You have to actually walk through and do the work now. It's not a magical pill or a card and I say, hey, take this and boom, you be good. No, that's just a catalyst for you to get going. It's the bell that rings that says, okay, time to go. And it also says, if you find yourself pulling a wagon of woes, strive to do good and you will unhitch yourself from it. We can disconnect ourselves from that weight and that heaviness. It's a physiological, mental, psychological experience that's already been proven. That when we're going through hardships and we choose to do as much good as we possibly can that was in our power to do, we can unburden ourselves from the difficulty. Exactly what we said at the beginning of this talk. It's exactly what Leo read out of Happy Life. We can lessen our pain. We can lessen our pain by choosing goodness. Maya Angelou, one of our favorite American writers, poets, amongst many other things she was when she was alive, she says, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. So we have freedom of thought to change our perspective and how we view things. She goes on to say, the difficulty of today is the effect of the folly of the past. Life is renewed at every moment. So our past will echo into our present. Dire situations change for the better, like shadow-filled landscapes suddenly lit by the sun. Do not make a truce with misfortune, idleness, or complaining. When we talk about resolve, when she talks about finding resignation. It's not about making a truce with misfortune and just saying, okay, this is just the way it's going to be. Life is going to be terrible. My life is going to suck forever. So be it. That's not what resignation is. That is making a truce or settling for your misfortunes, your idleness, your complaining. You're just settling for that ickiness inside of you. That's not what Spiritism or Joanna, or one and the same, is asking us to do. No. No, make the choice. Say it out loud. Affirm it. I want to be happy. I want to make choices that'll lead me to a deeper, sustaining happiness, and actions that will lead me to it. You are the master of your destiny, and its meeting point for you is the infinite. So we are immortal beings. We can have many, many lifetimes. But in the Spirit's book, it tells us we can reach our goals, we can reach happiness sooner rather than later, depending upon what choices we make. Life is sort of a sum of our choices and our thoughts. That's not to say that we can't modify, we can't get better, and we can't redress and redo. Absolutely, we can. We can circle back and say, you know what? Let me do this differently. Let me do this differently. We've had so many examples of that throughout life. We have 1,001 examples of that. In our society and societies past, so many people who have done that. Maybe not by the thousands and millions, but there have been enough where we can say, wow, that person, this person, Paul did it. When he was Saul, he became Paul. He changed. He was a murderer. Many people did it and have done it. She goes on to finalize with these words. Those who devalue, discredit, and invalidate themselves get left behind. We love this phrase because she's saying, you need to love yourself. You need to love yourself. Stop putting yourself second. It's not selfish to show self-compassion. It's not selfish to work on yourself. It's not selfish to set up a boundary to tell someone, no, that doesn't serve me. That doesn't make me feel good. I don't want that. I want to do better. I want better. I want to strive to be the best person I can be. I want to connect with myself because within us, if the divine laws are written in our conscience, that means that we have the divine within us. We just need to tap into it. We need to get in contact with it. She ends out this chapter, she says, it is imperative that you get positively involved with the divine plan. Those who do not never grow. We need to get on board. And if you're unsure how to do that, I'll give you a tip that we've used in the past. We often pray, dear God, please let me do what I said and wrote in my reincarnatory contract plan that I was going to do. Please, God, help me to fulfill that. And we pray that prayer every day. And it is a form of an affirmation because we want to go back to the spirit realm, what Andrea Louise refers to as a completer in the book No Solar. So we want to go back to the spirit realm better than what we started with. Let's start saying those affirmations. Let me connect to the divine, to the divine plan. Let me be connected so I can grow, so I can learn. If we're suffering, we're enduring pain, Let's seek help for that. Let's not just sit in our homes. It doesn't mean that we have a chronic illness. It doesn't mean that we're crazy. There are times in life we might just need some additional assistance, and we'll be all the better for it. She goes on to say, if you would rather suffer, you're free to do so until you finally opt for well-being. So do not make mountains out of molehills. No one is destined to suffer. Suffer is always the result of a negative action, never the cause. One of the things we found as a good reminder, and Joanna always promotes this as well, is that inner dive within ourselves, that inner journey, if you want to call it that, introspection, self-evaluation, whatever term you want to call it, doesn't matter. But it's that act of going inside of ourselves and talking, whether it's to those different parts of ourselves, when different emotions appear, talking to talking to those emotions. Now, some of us might read this one particular, and I want to bring this to light real quick before we end, when she says, do not make mountains out of molehills. Let's be aware that however we feel about a situation is how we feel. We are entitled to our emotions for them to be validated. But also know that that is not the end all to be all. We don't have to feel that way. We don't have to have that perspective forever. Because oftentimes that perspective or that feeling is part of what weighs us down. It's because either we feel like we're the victim. We feel like these horrible things that were done to us, and we feel terrible. And that's valid. But we don't have to be encapsulated by those chains. We can unburden ourselves. Because we are not destined to live in misery. We're not destined to suffer. That is not written in our reincarnatory plan. That is never written in our reincarnatory plan. Thou shalt suffer. No. Thou shalt learn. Thou shalt grow. I don't think your reincarnatory plan has language in it, but the plans are for us to grow, to evolve. Now, how we choose the perspectives we view it from and the feelings that we perpetuate or feel are our choice. They are our own. But also know that they don't have to be forever. We don't have to feel those ways. We can make decisions and choices to lead us to a better place. So, how do we start working on our choices? Well, we got to become self-aware, right? How do you become self-aware? So I know at the end of every talk, we open up for questions. I know we're going to open up here in just a second for questions. But I have a question. How do you, the listener, how do you modify your choices? Really? How does one do that? If we have freedom of choice, how do I work on myself? How do you work on yourself? I honestly, if there's anyone watching, maybe there's a handful, if anyone's willing to put themselves out there, how do you work on yourself? If you're like, I just don't know, I'm not sure, well, here's a little tip, a little helpful tip for you out there. Oh, actually, I forgot the last phrase from her. She says, without a guilty conscience, sentimentality, or coercion, make an honest evaluation of your life and awaken to what you should produce that is good, useful, and constructive. fully invested in your happiness. And that is her last word. So she ends it with, honestly, look at yourself. Honestly, let's look at myself, make an honest evaluation, putting aside our emotions for a second, putting aside the part of us that might feel guilty, the part of us that might try to reason or make sense of why I'm. No, just make an honest evaluation of our life. Let's not talk about, well, it's like that because, my sister's mother's cousin's brother's uncle friend's dog. No. Make an honest evaluation of your life as to what you should produce that is good, useful, and constructive. GUC. Good, useful, and constructive. Fully and fully invested in your happiness. So how do we make this evaluation? Well, one of the thousands of hundreds of ways we can do that, taking a look at ourselves, there's some very simple, basic ways. This might even be at the elementary level, and that's okay, because sometimes it's like back to basics is the best we can do. Because when you're going through a trial and tribulation, you don't have the time to be all complex. You need something that's going to ground you, something that's basic, simple, and I can do without having to put a whole lot of thought into it, because I just need to start somewhere. So the question I have to ask myself, how can I improve? Well, we have lots of templates on the internet, and you can see one right here. You put your name, put your date, write out currently I can something I need to improve on, and my goal is, list out your ways to reach that goal and put a date on it. Now, is that date set in stone? No, it's debatable. It can move. Give yourself a realistic time frame. Okay, I want to give myself 6 months to work on this. I give myself 3 months. I give myself half a year or a year. That might seem like a really, really long time, but cut yourself some slack. We're talking about generations of lifetimes of us behaving this way. It might take a little while. One of the other awesome things that I actually, we've tried to do this within our own family is a vision board. And here's a vision board worksheet. You can find this on the internet. Again, you just Google it. And vision boards are awesome because you're visually looking at your goals and things that you want to set for yourself, that you want to make new choices. You want to make healthier choices, whether it's in relationships, whether it's the relationship with your partner or your mother or your sister or your uncle or your neighbor or your boss or whatever. You want to put that on a board because you really want to actively be working on it. And if a board doesn't work for you, we've got worksheets. If a worksheet doesn't work for you, you could just write it out in some other way or fashion. I had a really close friend of mine. She used to use index cards, and she'd write out the different things that she wanted to do in her life. She would literally paste it on the wall. Whenever I would go visit her at her apartment, I used to laugh at her. This is like 15 years ago, because I just thought it was kind of comical that I would see all of her goals on the wall. And I wish I had taken a picture of it, because I think the better part of most of it she has achieved 15 years later, I would say. I'm looking at her life now and how she is and how much she's grown as a person, just beautiful. But, we can track that back to 15 years ago of her setting those intentions and saying, I want to be better. She wanted to break the generational curse, if you will, in her family of addiction and unstable living situations and all types of negativity. She wanted to be the one that changed her family tree. And she did that by working consistently on herself, setting goals, and not just saying, I want to be happy, not just choosing happiness, but setting out those goals. That is the important part of this. We cannot forget. So thank you all so much for listening to me. And if you don't have this book by Joanna, it is a marvelous book, Times of Health and Conscientiousness. It is just so enlightening. Don't take my word for it. Purchase your copy. It's mind-blowing. So that's all I have for you today. I know that we can stop sharing my screen so we can talk to each other. Stop screen. Okay.
Are you okay there? Can you see me?
I can see you.
Great. Kirsten,
Oh,
thank you
yeah.
so much for all this information that you brought us. And one of the highlights I would like to bring here, which is very important to us, I think this, for our viewers, it emphasizes the need to read the Spirit's book, to read the Gospel according to Spiritism, to make a connection with all these teachings of these amazing um, um, teachers, right? And the author of these books, different books, whether we're studying Spiritism through Joanna de Angelis, Manuel Filomena de Miranda, it's always important for us to go back to the core of Spiritism. So I think that, really this is a great highlight of that importance, that that we go back and we rescue the teachings that is there. All that they're doing is to bring a way for us to think deeper into the teachings that are already brought by the spirits and Kardec. So thank you for that. This is always food for thought for us, because when we talk about the idea of making choices, right? It rescues a bunch of things inside of us, and I think that this is it comes in the right time with spring, that we're springing again into this new life. So I think this is just so nice for all of us. On that note, I would like to thank everyone for all the hellos, all the welcomes, the connection here with one another. It really gives us the boost to continue and to really do this work in terms of bringing this message to one another. I would like to start with the comment that Abby mentioned here. I think it's nice to bring these comments
we
as
had
well.
another comment up there from Raquel. Are we skipping Raquel?
No, I think
Abby was first. I'm sorry.
Abby was first, yes. She
Okay.
says, my mantra today is be off of this world, not in it. For me, this means not to get involved in drama and travel light, right? Great talk, Kirsten. Happy Easter, everyone. Happy Easter to all of you as well. So it is true, right? I don't know if you want to make a comment on this, but it's always important for us to really not, we're here. We're on the physical body, in the physical body, but we don't want to let the craziness take over our lives, right? Choices.
Right.
Yep. Just a lot of people also responded to you when you ask, do we have full freedom, right? So Yasko said, not completely free will. And then Abby says, yes, free will. Paula also said yes. And then we move on to a really interesting question from Raquel. Yes, how to reconcile free will and reincarnatory programming?
It's so complex. I mean, at least the way that it is in my mind, because I view it like this, and I heard Divaldo say something once about something similar, where, sometimes we try to run away from problems in our lives, and we can do that. We can run away from situations to get away from it, because we don't want to deal with it. But Divaldo was saying that no matter what we do, we will always encounter that which we need to learn. So if I'm meant to learn something, if I'm meant to grow in some way or fashion, the circumstances of how that happens can look different, can be different. So for instance, we do know there's an attenuation of the law. So to give a more concrete example, it's kind of like if a gentleman was meant to originally, due to things in his past life, he might have, he was supposed to lose a leg, but due to his lifestyle and all the good that he had done in his life, he only lost his foot or his toe. So there is an attenuation depending upon the choices that we make. So free will and reincarnatory programming. I view it as, okay, so there are plans. In my mind, for some reason, I can't conceptualize it as programming per se, but more like a plan, like a template that exists. And maybe that's just semantics, but it's a template, right? Because circumstances can change. it's not that we have to have, we're meant to have our foot run over by a blue car, or maybe it's going to be a black car, or maybe it's going to be, if you're laying bricks or something and it's a brick that falls on your foot or something. So it's not the thing in and of itself, but it's what it produces. The point is for it to produce a catalytic moment in our lives to make change. So, did you guys hear when I said that? It's not the thing itself. Like, people are often, and they talk about this in the Spirits book, people often look at the material events and take that for fatality, when it's more about what we're supposed to be learning. So if in my life, through my choices, I can begin to grow and learn, I can modify outcomes. That's where the attenuation comes from. We won't have to endure such terrible hardships, quote unquote, that were meant to be a catalyst within my soul and my heart and my mind to change my perspective. If I go ahead and make that choice without waiting for pain to knock at my door, I'm changing how my life is going to flow. Does that absolve us of any wrongdoing? No, it does not. Whatever we're meant to learn from the things of our past, we have to learn. There are debts to be paid. But thank God in Spiritism, we have this attenuation. But also remember, before we come to this life, we know, the majority of us know what we're going to be enduring, what families we're being born into. But higher spirituality, and they say this in the Spirits book, they deal with probability. And we saw this word today, and it was such a beautiful word, and I love it because when I always say this, when I took the class statistics, of which I cried almost every day, it also was a great reminder of how the divine must work. Because the higher spirituality, God works with probability. There's high likelihood that we may go in one which way direction, right? So God sets out a template for you for your life and says, these are the things that you need to learn, but here are the possibilities that might happen. So we're put together side by side with someone who was an enemy of our past, because the point is to love them, to forgive them, to make amends, to redress. I want to say it. But there's a probability, because the fact that I hate them, that I might try and kill them. That probability is there. That's in the mix. God already knows the thousands of probabilities. He knows all the statistics of our life. If you've ever taken a statistics class, I feel for you. But you also know that statistics and math is everywhere. So we look at the complexities of math, and you just have to know that God deals with statistics. So he has that also. That's where free will plays a part. So God knows, okay, well, we have free will, so this person can go this way, can do so much better, or they can take another route. Either or might happen. That's why when people read our fortune or our future, it's not so reliable, because of freedom of choice. Because we have that. But yes, we are meant to learn certain things, but freedom of choice also means choices are not just something physical. Choices are also choosing to view things a certain way. So if someone is born with a physical illness that, they apparently had nothing to do with, they can't change it, there's no cure for it. So they have a choice to be really, really depressed about it, which is normal, happens to a lot of people. It's treatable, and you can find help for that to get you back on the right pathway to finding peace. Or we can, we will need to, sorry, I'm seeing some other comments in here. We have that choice to view it in one perspective or not. We give the choice to reframe it. Raquel, I don't know if I answered your question or not, but basically it's about reframing what we understand as free will and what we understand as reincarnatory plans, if that makes sense. But I know that I'm being told it's 6:20, so we're a little getting short on time. So I don't know, Leo, what you want to do about that, but
Well, we'll get going.
okay.
And
Yasko, okay.
go ahead.
So
Do you want
Yasko,
to read it? Or do you want me to read
yeah,
it? Go
yeah.
ahead.
Okay. Yasko says, since we are free to make our standard of happiness or affliction, what are the essential choices or what to take into account to ensure the balance towards happiness and less afflictions? It seems in the end, we have to acknowledge others and their desire for their happiness too. Great question. What are the essential choices or what's taken into account to ensure the balance towards happiness and less afflictions? I say that it looks different for everyone, and each person is so unique that we definitely can't say what it is for others. I can't say what those essential choices will be for you, for anyone, because life and happiness is different for everyone. It looks different to everyone. For me, happiness is just being with my family and in my small house, and I have no feelings to get anything larger. Some people feel like they need that, or some people feel like, well, I need this or that, or to be happy, whatever. Everything's different. It's not wrong necessarily. So I would say prayer is always a great way to find guidance if we're not sure which pathway to take or which choices. I think I read somewhere in the comments, someone said, I pray I think Abby said it in one of the comments, that she said she prays before she makes a choice or a decision she's not too sure about, something like that, she said, which I think is great, because we should utilize that as a tool for us in our lives. We're unsure what to do.
I believe that you already answered this question when I asked, can our conscience or the past hinder our freedom? If so, what can we do? I don't know if you want to further elaborate on it, but I think it's clear now. And some of the tips that Joanna de Angelis has brought to us as well.
Okay, then we'll move on because of time then.
You got it. What to say about those who believe that everything is a product of fate, no matter choice is made? What choice is made?
Well, what to say if people believe that? Well, if someone came to me and said that, I would say, well, that's your right. That's your right to believe that way. But if they're asking my opinion, I would tell them otherwise. Again, remember, this is a paradoxical question, because the very thing that Joanna said is that we don't have the right to impose upon anybody else our beliefs, how we view things. But if someone asks your opinion, you can say, well, this is my perspective. This is how I view life. I view life in such a way that our choices, our consequences, the things that we look at as, bad or good, are a direct relation to the choices that we make. So if someone's coming to you asking that question, they must be open to a different perspective, because you wouldn't want to bother saying that to someone or discussing that if someone doesn't believe that, if that makes sense.
So I believe this is
Oh,
a two-part question, Kirsten. I'll pose both of here because I think they are connected.
mhm.
Excuse me for my. Yeah, I think I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So she asked the following questions: how to unhook asking for help from weakness, how to teach asking for help as strength and the most responsible choice, and then she goes on to say, between the extremes of prideful independence and fearful dependency lies an evolving, humble, vulnerable, and healthy human being. So does that? I think it's
Okay.
connected.
Okay. So I'm going to comment on this first. So she says, go back to her initial one.
You got
How
it.
to
Yep.
unhook, asking for help, or in other words, how to stop equating asking for help as a weakness, and how to teach it more as a strength and the most responsible choice. So I am by no means the expert on this, of course, and others might have a different perspective. But the thing that comes to our mind is that it's a choice. It's the changing of paradigms, right? Things in society only changes when we see a large amount of people starting to normalize it. And we have seen that with gender fluidity, sexuality, even when it comes to matters of race and religion, when things start to become more normalized and mainstream, it seems like the collective consciousness begins to change. Or maybe it's vice versa. It's the collective consciousness is changing, and then it's manifesting in what we see in across the globe. But it's definitely each one of us as individuals have to be able to normalize that by just doing it and being okay with it. And I think it's also generational to some degree, because I look at my generation and my daughter's generation, and it's so much more acceptable to ask for help, to go to therapy. Dare I say, it's almost a fad, but not really. But it's so normal. It has become so normal. I've seen this, and I'm so happy about that for my daughter. And I only hope that my daughter's daughter's daughter and the generations moving forward, it's going to change. And I know previous generations, that was not the case. But those old ways no longer serve us. It no longer serves us. And I think this is more of a comment. She says, between the extremes of prideful independence and fearful dependency lives an evolving, humble, vulnerable, and healthy human being. Yeah, so life is all about balance. Thanks, Paula, and everyone else for their questions and comments. First, identify what is essential. Sorry, Leo, being your boat. What is essential to end my suffering? Second, what am I content to give up for the sake of others? Happiness. It is trade.
I think it's this is a comment that
Okay.
as you were asking, the evaluation, right, that Joanna de Angelis proposes to us in terms of what to do. How do we recognize that
Okay.
there is a change, right? So I think this
Mhm.
is a comment, and then we move on to the last couple comments here. Paula also said, "Happy Easter and Passover. We all have the givens of birth, death, and resurrection. Thanks for deepening our journey, Kirsten." One more from Rosario also saying, "Kirsten, thank you for the wonderful message." And Raquel saying, "Thanks." And Kirsten, in the name of everyone here, this was an amazing moment that we spent, an amazing topic as well. We ask God that we can receive more of this and, create moments like this between ourselves. And we hope that people watch this, especially with this topic with this holiday of Easter, right? As we are changing, as we're going through the transformations, right, of life. So I think this is an amazing moment for us to pick up, grab with our hands, bring it to our hearts, to our minds, and truly exercise it. So thank you. On that note, so we can finalize it, can we say our prayer for this evening?
Absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to say my final thought is
Please.
that Easter, at least in the religious sense or in some religious areas, we think about Jesus, you know, being resurrected. There's also the memory of Jesus dying, but truly the only death that truly exists will always be death of the pain and the suffering that we have. And the thing that will always be resurrected inside of us is the hope and the courage that we need to carry on. Because that is in part and largely part what Jesus brought to us, is to be reminded that we don't die, that there is happiness. It's sometimes not of this world. And what we experience here on this planet is not the truest of happiness, but we can get some semblance of happiness, but that there's hope. There's always hope. So, with that thought in mind, let's close our eyes and let's lift up our hearts and our minds to our divine creator, to our spirit guides, to our master Jesus, for the blessing of these moments together, for the blessings and insights from our dear Joanna de Angelis, through the blessed hands of the Brazilian medium, Divaldo Franco. We thank you, dear God, for having such freedom in this nation that we are able to practice to be together virtually, to be able to be reminded that we have the right to be happy. We ask our dear guides and mentors at this moment to use our connected minds of loving vibration so these healing waves of energy can reach all those who are truly in need of balance, reconnecting to themselves and to the divine, finding healing from the inside out, finding hope, finding solace. We pray for all those, especially during these times of celebration, of Passover, of Easter, and many other holidays to come that bring about and stir up love in our hearts and solidarity. May all these good vibrations be utilized to fertilize the hearts and minds of all those that are desiring for a better planet, a better self, and remembering Jesus and his message of love and kindness. We thank you, and so be it.
Until next time, everyone, thank you.